Long before ink touched parchment, and long before empires drew lines across maps, there was a forest the earth itself seemed to fear. They called it Kolgora, the forest of forgotten flesh. No birds sang within it. No stars dared shine above it. And no tribes near its edges ever spoke its name after dark. But deeper inside, past rivers that ran red and trees that bled when struck, there lived a people unlike any known to man. They were the Ngatu, and they did not eat flesh for hunger. They ate it to remember. For them, memory was not in the mind. It lived in blood and bone. To consume a body was to absorb its soul, its past, its pain. They believed true immortality was not living forever, but being eaten forever. And for centuries, their rituals echoed in secret, guarded by a jungle alive with whispers, shadows, and drums that beat like dying hearts. The tale begins with Oryuan, a young warrior of a rival tribe, the Jabkara, sent into the forbidden forest as punishment. His crime? He dared challenge the old gods. He said the Ngatu were a myth, a bedtime tale told to keep children close. So the elders gave him a torch, a knife carved from obsidian, and a single warning. If the forest does not kill you, you may still wish it had. He entered Kolgora on the first blood moon of the cycle. The leaves shimmered black. The air reeked of old wounds. And within minutes, the jungle swallowed all sound behind him. Oryuan marched forward, but he did not see the first sign, a pile of skulls at the base of a crooked tree. Each face is etched with spirals carved from the inside. Oryuan didn't flinch when he saw the skulls. He had hunted leopards. He had walked barefoot across burning salt plains. But this silence felt like it watched him. The trees stood too close together. Their branches twisted like broken limbs, and their bark peeled away in patterns, not randomly. Symbols made from nature itself. Spirals, eyes, rows of teeth. And hanging from a low branch above, a human jawbone swung like a pendant, clicking softly in the windless air. He moved forward. He did not know that every step forward was a step inward, not into space, but into memory. The forest did not grow outward. It folded. By nightfall, he reached a shallow river. The water ran thick, too thick, like syrup, but with a copper scent he recognized from the killing fields, blood. He crouched down, touched it, and rubbed it between his fingers. Fresh. Then a drumbeat. One deep, slow thud. Not thunder, not echo, but a heartbeat is too large to be human. Then another. Then silence again. He lit his torch, and the forest screamed, not with mouths, but with faces. Faces in the bark, faces in the dirt, faces woven into nests in the trees. Each one contorted, some in agony, some in awe. Oryuan stepped back and tripped on something soft. He turned. It was a woman's body, half buried in leaves. Skin stretched tight over bone. Her eyes wide open, but her mouth sealed shut with red twine. Her chest had been carved open, but not torn. Carefully, like ritual. Then he heard it. A voice. Not from her. From inside his own chest. You do not walk alone, Oryuan. His torch flickered. And then he saw them. Eyes in the trees. Dozens. Watching. Not beasts. Not spirits. The Ngatu. They didn't move like men. The Ngatu stepped from the trees like memories rising from a fevered mind. Sudden, disjointed, half-formed. Their bodies were gaunt but strong. Their skin painted with ash and streaked red across their torsos in spiral blood glyphs. Most wore masks, some made of bark, others from carefully stretched human skin, with empty holes for eyes and stitched mouths shaped into wide, permanent grins. But it was the way they stood, unnaturally still, tilted slightly forward, as if listening not with ears but with bone. Oryuan gripped his obsidian blade, but none attacked. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, his mask blackened with soot, his shoulders cloaked in dried scalps. He raised a hand, long, bony fingers tipped with claws carved from human teeth. Oryuan expected death. Instead, the figure spoke in Oryuan's voice. You have entered the mouth. Now you must feed, or be fed upon. Then, silence again, and in a single moment, they turned and walked away, deeper into the forest. Oryuan stood frozen. He could run, but to where? The jungle behind him was no longer the same. The trees had shifted again. The sky had disappeared. There was only forward. He followed. They led him through tunnels of roots, past trees whose trunks held entire torsos fused into bark, mouths forever gasping. He saw children's bones tied together to form wind chimes. He heard voices whispering memories that were not his. Names, cries, love songs, and war chants. At last, they came upon a clearing, perfectly round. In the center, a massive stone altar carved with faces, some screaming, some laughing, all real. The tall masked figure turned. He pointed at the altar. If you remember nothing, you are not worth eating. And from the darkness, they brought out a body, still twitching. Oryuan recognized the tribal markings. A man from his own village. Bound, bleeding, alive. Then Gato handed Oryuan a sharpened shard of bone. The meaning was clear. Eat, or be eaten. Oryuan's hand trembled. The shard of bone, dull at one end, jagged at the other, felt like it pulsed with memory. The man on the altar moaned, eyes rolling, tongue cracked from thirst. Oryuan had known him once. Cade, a hunter, a cousin by blood. He had laughed once at Oryuan's first failed bowshot, had sung drunken songs with him under the moon. And now he lay stripped bare, body carved with wounds not deep enough to kill, only to speak. Oryuan looked up at the masked Ngatu. They stared in absolute silence. A test. A ritual. If you remember nothing, you are not worth eating. Those words echoed. It wasn't just about consuming flesh. It was about proving that memory still lived, that the jungle had not swallowed his soul whole. Oryuan stepped forward. He did not cut. Not yet. Instead, he placed a hand on Cade's chest. Cade's eyes flickered open, and in them, a trace of recognition. Just a sliver. Just enough. Oryuan spoke in the old tongue, words he hadn't used since childhood. Forgive me, brother. Let the forest feast on the wound, not the bond. Then he raised the bone shard and cut a thin line across his own forearm. Blood welled up, dark and slow. He smeared it across the altar. A gust of wind hissed through the clearing. The masks tilted. Then Gata didn't move, but the jungle did. The trees leaned closer, the ground pulsed. A choice had been made. The tall masked figure stepped forward. His fingers reached out and touched the blood smear. He sniffed. You remember. Good. Then he slashed Cade's bonds. The man collapsed, unconscious but alive. Then Gata caught him before he fell and dragged him away, back into the foliage. Oryuan staggered. His legs gave out, and the jungle opened beneath him. The altar sank, like a mouth closing. Roots curled around Oryuan's waist and pulled him downward, deeper into the womb of the forest, down into the burial vein. Oryuan fell, not through air, but through roots. Slick, warm tendrils coiled around his body as he slipped downward. The walls were alive, pulsing with sap and breath. It wasn't a tunnel. It was an esophagus. The forest was swallowing him whole. And then, silence. A thud. He landed in a shallow pool, red like rust. The liquid stung his skin. It was blood, or something older. He rose slowly, shivering. All around him, walls of tangled bone and bark twisted together like a grotesque mural. Faint echoes murmured through the dark, whispers in a forgotten tongue. The price. The pact. The hunger. He was in the vein chamber, the deepest heart of the forest, where the old ones fed. In the center stood an obsidian monolith. Atop it, a skull, carved with markings that burned faint red. And beneath it, thousands of finger bones laid out in spirals, offerings to some ancient, unseen deity. Oryuan stepped forward. The ground squished beneath his feet, and each step triggered a memory, as if the bones beneath him carried the stories of those devoured. He heard his mother's voice, his grandfather's death chant, Cade's laughter, all of it, swirling like ghosts made of vapor. Why do you seek us? A voice said, from nowhere and everywhere. Oryuan dropped to his knees. Then Gata masks had vanished, and now, dozens of white eyes blinked open across the chamber walls. Not human, not an animal, something older. He swallowed hard. I seek the truth. I seek the first fire. I seek the reason why my people became beasts. The chamber rumbled. A laugh, low and ragged, echoed back. Then become the beast. And maybe you'll remember. Suddenly, roots lashed out from the monolith. They pierced his palms, his shoulders. He screamed as something invaded his veins, cold, and then burning hot. His vision spun. In seconds, the chamber was gone, and he stood beneath a different sky, thousands of years in the past. The forest was untouched, virgin and vast. And ahead of him, a tribe of men and women, painted in blood, danced around a pit of fire, throwing flesh into it while howling to the stars. And in the center, a child, tied down, screaming. Oryuan realized with horror, this is the beginning. The sky burned orange, though no sun could be seen. A black moon hung overhead, swollen and sick, casting a glow that pulsed like a heartbeat across the ancient canopy. Oryuan stood, unseen among the dancers. His body was his own, but somehow not. He was tethered to this vision, a memory burned into the soil of the forest itself. Before him, the primitive tribe twisted and chanted, slathered in blood and ochre. Their eyes rolled back, mouths foaming as the ritual reached its climax. In the center of the clearing, a stone altar held the boy, no older than 8. His skin was pale with fear, his mouth stuffed with bitter herbs to silence his screams. The chants grew louder. Kuma Viri. Raa Tukangor. Nurubiel. 3 masked figures emerged, cloaked in the hide of jungle cats and draped in serpent skins. One carried a bone dagger. The second held a bowl carved from a human skull. The third, a torch that burned black. They circled the boy, humming in a low, guttural tone that felt older than the earth. This, a voice echoed in Oryuan's mind, was the first pact. The dagger slid across the child's chest, not to kill, but to mark. Strange symbols were carved into his skin, forming a spiral that bled but didn't gush, as if the blood obeyed. The second priest filled the bowl with the boy's blood and passed it through the circle. Each tribe member drank, one after another, men, women, even children with milk teeth. The final priest touched the black flame to the boy's forehead. The moment fire met flesh, he screamed, but it was no longer human. It was a beast cry. The sky roared in response. The earth split, and from the trees above, a rain of bones fell. Jaguar skulls, serpent fangs, human ribs, teeth from no known species. And then silence. The boy was gone, but in his place stood something else. A thin figure, naked, covered in blood, eyes black, mouth open in a silent scream. His bones clicked like they didn't belong. And then he leapt, straight into the chest of one of the priests. The flesh ripped like paper. And thus, the first cannibal was born. Oryuan collapsed, trembling. The vision blurred. But he had seen enough. This forest was cursed not by the gods, but by man. Hunger wasn't punishment, it was a choice. A deal struck in desperation. A pact sealed with the blood of children. The chamber returned. Oryuan gasped, finding himself once more in the vein chamber. But now, the white eyes watched in silence. Do you see? The voice whispered. You are the heir of that choice. You carry the hunger. What will you do with it? The air inside the vein chamber turned heavy, thick like syrup. Oryuan stumbled forward, his breath shallow, hands trembling. The vision still echoed in his mind. The screaming child, the pact, the hunger. And now, he stood alone. Except for them. The watchers. Dozens of them. Naked, twisted, lean, with flesh like aged bark and veins glowing a faint red beneath the skin. They lined the walls of the chamber, unmoving. Eyes glowing white, unblinking. They were the descendants of that ancient choice. They were the keepers of the ritual. And Oryuan, he was the next name in the cycle. A voice rose, not from outside, but from within his bones. You have seen. You have felt. Now you must decide. From the darkness ahead, a path of glowing stones emerged, leading to a raised altar. Atop it lay 2 items. On the left, a dagger carved from bone, still stained with the child's blood from the vision. On the right, a bundle of roots, bound with black string, pulsing softly, the last herb of the forest elders. A voice echoed again. The dagger feeds the hunger. The roots silence it. Choose. Oryuan staggered forward. He felt the jungle itself press in on his skin. If he chose the dagger, he would inherit the ancient power, the strength of the cannibal lords, their speed, their dominance, their communion with the red god buried beneath the riverbed. But at the cost of his humanity, his soul. If he chose the roots, he would seal away the curse forever, in the bloodline, silence the forest's madness, and bury the hunger in the depths where no voice could reach it again. But he would die. Either way, the forest demanded sacrifice. He stepped closer. The watchers didn't move, but he felt their breath on his neck. He reached out, but before his fingers touched either relic, the ground shook. From the back of the chamber, something stirred. A massive hand, claws like black stone, gripped the edge of the wall. And from the shadows rose the crimson beast, the one from the stories, the firstborn of the ritual, the boy from the altar, now grown, or what remained of him. Its chest still bore the spiral carvings. Its eyes burned like coals. It towered 12 feet high, ribs exposed, mouth torn wide. Choose, the voice screamed inside Oryuan's skull. But Oryuan stood frozen. The crimson beast stepped forward. The ground quaked, and with one roar, it charged. The roar of the crimson beast tore through the chamber like a thunderclap. Oryuan stood paralyzed, eyes locked with the creature that once was a child, now a demon forged by centuries of pain, ritual, and ancient bloodlust. Its feet slammed the earth, each step splintering the floor of the vein chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling. The watchers still didn't move. They simply watched, their mouths slightly parted, as if waiting to devour the outcome. Oryuan turned back toward the relics. The dagger. Its handle twitched, as though calling to him. The roots. They pulsed like a slowing heartbeat. The beast came closer. A massive hand swept through the air. Oryuan ducked just in time, the clawed fingers slashing stone where his head had been. He rolled, grabbed the dagger, and screamed, not from pain, but from the surge of ancient power that flooded into him. Veins on his arms turned red-hot. His breath steamed in the cold air. A voice, 1,000 voices, began chanting inside him. Blood for root, bone for soul. You are now the heir of Crimson. The beast roared again, but this time Oryuan didn't run. He lunged. The two collided like gods of old, claw against blade, roar against scream. The dagger found flesh. The beast howled, a sound that cracked the very stone beneath their feet. It lashed out with its claws, slicing Oryuan's side. Blood splattered the altar. The watchers began to chant. Low, rhythmic, ancient. One becomes many. One becomes the root. One becomes the river. Oryuan slashed again. And again. The dagger glowed, white-hot now. Not just a weapon, but a key. The crimson beast fell back, wounded, but not defeated. Then, from the cracks in the ground, the river rose. Red, thick, glowing, the crimson river flowed upward as if reversing time. It surrounded them. It sang. Oryuan stepped into it. The pain vanished. The blood on his wounds burned away. He felt reborn. The beast tried to escape the current, but the river wrapped around it like a cage. And the dagger in Oryuan's hand? It changed. No longer bone. It turned into crimson crystal. The voices whispered, one last strike. End the cycle, or become it. Oryuan raised the blade. The beast looked into his eyes. And for a moment, he saw the boy again. Terrified, crying, lost. Oryuan hesitated. But the jungle, the people, the forest demanded a choice. He closed his eyes and brought the blade down, straight into the beast's heart. The crimson river exploded. Red mist. Light. Silence. When the red mist cleared, silence ruled. No birds. No insects. No jungle breath. Just a void where the vein chamber had stood. Now a crater of scorched stone, its walls bleeding slow streams of red. The watchers were gone. The chant silenced. In the middle of the ruin, Oryuan stood, drenched in river blood. But he was no longer the same man. The crimson blade had dissolved in his hand, leaving a mark on his palm, a spiral made of veins. And from that spiral, something pulsed. The jungle knew it. I felt it. The air bent around him, like heat over fire. And then the forest bowed. The ancient trees creaked low, as if recognizing a new keeper, a new curse, a new god. Because when Oryuan killed the crimson beast, he didn't destroy the curse. He absorbed it. He emerged from the jungle weeks later, barefoot and silent. The tribe saw him coming and dropped to their knees, not from fear, but from memory. Old blood remembered old power. And Oryuan, he glowed from within. But his eyes, they were no longer just his. They carried 1,000 years of hunger, pain, and ritual. He never spoke again. He returned to the crimson tree, knelt beside its massive roots, and disappeared into the soil. Some say he became part of the roots. Others say he still walks, only at night, whispering to those who get too close. The river still remembers. And deep in the forest, when the moon bleeds red and drums echo from the soil, tribes still hold the crimson ritual. Not to summon, not to banish, but to appease him. Because now, the jungle has a new guardian. Neither man nor beast. Not a legend, but curse, bound in blood, remembered by the forest, and whispered in fear. Oryuan, the heir of the crimson river.